Thomas the Tank Engine and Thomas and Friends. We all know what it is. It started as a book series in the 40s and got adapted into a TV show in the 80s. It's a children's show for preschoolers, right? Well, yes, but there's more to it than you think. As of late, I've had lots of people ask me, why do you still watch Thomas? And why do older people like Thomas? And I've asked myself this too, many times. I just thought I should make this video to go over 6 points to understand why we really like Thomas. And I'm not trying to argue that Thomas is mind-blowing or trying to get you to like it too. That's not what this video is about. This video is about trying to get people to understand why me and many other teenagers and even adults still watch Thomas. Another disclaimer, this video will mostly be talking about the first 5 seasons, the books, and by extension 6 and 7, because those are the definitive seasons for us. Most everything afterwards is just dog dookie. So, let's begin. One of the reasons we enjoy Thomas so much is the realism. Thomas the Train is obviously about trains, and they get it so right. The creator of the railway series, Wilbur Awdry, volunteered at some railways, so he knows about trains. Lots of the crashes in the show and books are also inspired by real-life crashes with real trains. Not to mention how in the show they made the sets look so realistic. There are countless locations in the show that have sets that look so real. One of the first things that comes to my mind is the Season 2 Brendam Docks. Speaking of locations, there's attention on geography too. Wilbur Awdry made a map for the books, and fans such as myself love to try and map out the TV series to see what locations line up and what leads where. The direction is also very realistic too. Before 2017, you would never see engines bounce or jump off the track in any realistic manner. These are real machines and are treated as such. The only unrealistic part about the trains is obviously the faces. Speaking of the trains, some real trains also appear in the show, such as the Flying Scotsman, City of Truro, and Stepney, the latter of which being named in the series and had 4 episodes all to himself. All in all, the realism in Thomas is one of the best aspects of it in my opinion. Another reason we still enjoy Thomas is because of its darker themes. I'm not trying to argue that Thomas is 100% dark and scary. The vast majority of it is lighthearted. What I'm trying to say is that the show knows how to get dark when it needs to. For example, scrapping is super prevalent in the show. Scrapping is basically death, but for the trains. It's brought up a lot in the show and books, and we've seen it almost happen numerous times, such as Oliver in Escape. He was running away from being scrapped. Or Douglas in the twin engines. Only one engine was supposed to arrive and one be scrapped, but Douglas decided to escape with his twin Donald to Sodor. Or Stepney, and Stepney gets lost. He gets sent down the wrong line into the scrapyard, where he's seconds away from getting crabbed by the claw of death, but gets saved. There are so many instances of this in the show, and it's hard to keep track of them all. Another somewhat mature element of the show is the crashes. Most of the crashes and runaways in the show are treated with direness and feel very much like real train crashes, and most of them are. A prime example is the runaway in A Close Shave. Duck helps a freight train up the hill and is coasting back to the station. But then the trucks break away and the episode becomes a sprint down the main line to try and stop the trucks before they plow into the back of James. This runaway isn't wacky and goofy, it's played out with lots of seriousness. If Duck doesn't stop the runaway in time, all the people in James's coaches will be dead. Thankfully, the runaway ends with James breaking into a siding and crashing into a barber shop. But thankfully they were going much slower at that time, and no one was injured. Allegedly. Sadly, the newer crashes are stupid. All in all, the maturity is another great reason why Thomas sticks around in people's heads. Another main reason why we still enjoy Thomas is the characters. The characters are a big part of any TV show or movie, and if the characters are good, the whole production is good. Thomas is no exception. This show has some of the best characters in my opinion, and not just for a kids show. These characters have such great personalities, and many of them have arcs that span across its first 5 to 7 seasons. A prime example of this that many people, including myself, point to is Thomas himself. In Season 1, Thomas is incredibly cheeky and makes fun of the bigger engines, but he's still young yet and doesn't go too far. In Season 2, Thomas is at his worst in terms of being nice, because he has a bone to pick with about the entire cast this year. In Season 3, Thomas definitely grows a lot. For example, in this season, he's worried about the passengers not having a ride home, but in the previous season, he didn't care.
We shan't get any further today. But what about my passengers? Asked Thomas.
If we hurried across the viaduct, it might collapse, and then you'd have no passengers at all. What would you do then? Run my train on time for one thing.
He's still the same old Thomas deep down though. In Season 4, he's more or less the same, but notably in Thomas and the Special Letter, his boastfulness leads to a big crash, and he almost misses his trip to the mainland with the other engines because of it. Most people, including myself, see this as the big moment for Thomas where he realizes being boastful doesn't help him get things done, and decides to change once and for all. In Season 5, he's inarguably at his peak. Sure, he still teases from time to time, but it's all in good fun. In this season, he helps engines a lot, and is definitely at his nicest. It is Season 5 though, and a lot of the characters' high-headed bantery sides come out that season, and Thomas is no exception. In Season 6 and 7, he's more or less the same, but he does get knocked down a few pegs from time to time, so I don't count those seasons as much. At the end of the day, the characters are definitely one of the main drawing points for the show. As much as we love Thomas, we must admit that there are still some bad things about it, and we must address them. One of the main reasons Thomas is looked down on so much is because it's grouped with all the other shows for preschoolers like Paw Patrol, Barney, and everything in between. I don't know about you, but I've never seen an episode of Barney where he had an arc where he learns about how his brothers died and there's only one left. Another reason why people look down on Thomas is because of the state of the series after 2004. That year in Season 8, the series got a soft reboot with longer episodes, less interesting stories, and babyish learning segments that would play between every episode on PBS Kids. All aspects that made the show prone to preschool stereotypes. This only worsened in 2009 when the show converted to CGI animation rather than the models they used for 12 seasons and 25 years prior. The episodes got even longer. Fortunately, in 2012, Mattel bought Thomas and Friends and hired lots of new members that actually gave a crap about Thomas. It all went into effect in 2013, and the show was getting slightly better. Each season after 16 was better than the last. In 2017, however, it was announced that Season 21 would be the final season of this era, and in 2021, we got treated by dog water. Season 22 to 24 followed Thomas going around the world and meeting lots of totally not stereotypical international engines along the way. Yeah, this era really sucked. In 2020, Season 24 came out, and no news about the original series came out for a little while after that. In 2021, it was revealed that the original show had been cancelled to make way for the 5th reboot of the series, and also the worst. We all know it, and we all hate it. All Engines Go. All Engines Go is the 2D reboot to the series that threw all known realism out the window. Sadly, the reboot looks to be performing well, so we won't have to kiss it goodbye anytime soon. If you previously stereotyped Thomas as just a dumb kids show, maybe start reevaluating. I think a good comparison for the first 5 to 7 seasons of Thomas would be the show Bluey. You know that Australian show for preschoolers that adults also love too? Yep, that's Bluey. And it's also Thomas. They're both largely kids shows, but there's stuff that older people can enjoy in them. It's basically the same situation. You probably saw this coming. Another main reason we keep coming back to Thomas is because of the nostalgia invoked in us. I'd be very surprised if anyone in the Thomas fandom didn't watch it as a kid. That's one of the driving forces to it, that it reminds us of being a kid. I have so many fond memories of when I was 4 or 5, playing with my trains and watching the show. Despite the points I went over before about the series being somewhat dark, the first 5 to 7 seasons are just as much enjoyable for the kids watching than the fandom. I remember as a kid, I owned DVDs of both model eras, the classic series and the newer model series. As a kid, I tended to lean more to the DVDs with episodes that came up before the changes in Series 8, such as the 2004 DVD, Thomas and His Friends Get Along. 10 random episodes from the first 3 seasons, and so many episodes on that I can remember watching as a kid. Also, it's not just plain nostalgia, it's also charm. Just look at these engines and tell me you don't feel immaculate good vibes. As mature and dark as this series can get, you can't deny that most of the series contains good vibes and overall fun time. Also, just the theme song in general. It's so catchy and charming. Episodes like Thomas and Birdie and No Sleep for Cranky are just so fun because they don't have morals and are just an overall fun time. If Thomas didn't have nostalgia attached to it, I'm sure there wouldn't be a fandom at all. Here's the big one. The main reason I've stuck around as a Thomas fan for all these years is the community. Honestly, the Thomas community is one of the most powerful communities out there. The show ended in 2020, but people are still making full episodes and crazily in-depth content analysis to this day. There are lots of people who make Thomas video essays, like The Unlucky Tug, Thomas Theorist, Sodor Life, and so much more. Not to mention how many people make fan-made stories. The head writer of the Thomas fandom is definitely the buried truck. He's made so many stories that people will adapt till the end of time. Speaking of adaptations, people adapt these stories, and sometimes their own in episodes of the original series, mostly with 3 forms of media. A railway simulator game called Trains that Thomas fans have squished and changed so much to accommodate Thomas trains with changeable expressions and moving eyes. Roblox, where people have made games such as Blue Train with Friends, Soda Online, Real Useful Engines, and Cedric Isles, which continue to push the boundaries of Roblox to become as realistic to the show as possible, and with merchandise, which I'm sure nobody saw coming. People have made such creative videos with their merchandise, and I highly respect these people. I've tried out all of these mediums, and I can say that Roblox is the best for making quick content, but if you want to put lots of work in, I suggest using merchandise, because not many people use it anymore, and it's super rewarding after you have it edited. Not to mention 2 specific people. Mainland Studios, who makes Blender animations that could give the CGI animated series a run for its money, and this little skrunklo called Flying Pringle. Do you know what this guy did? He made a completely original episode with Gauge 1 Miles that looks just like the show. Do you want to know how much of a feat that is? He made an episode that looks just like it came out of a show with a budget of hundreds of thousands of pounds with a self-funded budget. It just amazes me on Earth he was able to do this, but he did. And that's why one of the main driving forces for me to stay invested in Thomas is the community. I hope you enjoyed this video where I rambled about a show for preschoolers and why it's so great. Like I said at the start, I'm not trying to bring you to our side in this video. This is just for people to better understand why people like me still enjoy the series. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to boost my ego, and I'll see you in the next video.